Let's move that minefield over there. Let's talk about the SD card. The SD card now, you can probably explain it better than I can, but a lot of people have told me that everyone has a nice high-def camera now. We're not talking about phones, we're just talking about like we're being filmed on right now.
Or a still picture camera that also does video, things like that.
Listen,
yeah.
and so it's all using the SD card. And they're using these as storage, so some people have told me they've got like 10 stacked up on their bookshelf.
It does have a lifespan. You can write too much, you can read too much, and that can cause this.
I've had these fail.
Right,
yeah.
and that causes that failure, or your data may be written, but it's corrupt.
Right.
So that's a problem there. But again, I think the lifespan of these, if again, you're taking care of them and they're kept in a somewhat reasonably climate controlled area, I'd say 15 to 20 years. I mean, I feel like that's a safe estimate on...
And again, the connection device, I've got it. I know it's on there. It's good for 20 years. You still feel, and I'm not doubting you. Will I still in 15 years be able to push that into something and have it read?
I feel like, yes, for quite some time, I feel like there will be converters or something available that you can plug this into, and it will, on the other end, have the of the day connector, if you will.
Right. So external hard drives are in many ways, I know, they're like an SD?
They are very similar. So the big difference that I want to point out for anyone concerned about their, updating their media to a current day storage device is that hard drives, as we know them, have predominantly been mechanical. That means there's a spinning disk and a moving head that reads that disk, and so those are points of failure. So as a hard drive ages, I get concerned about all those parts still working fluidly and properly. Whereas again, this is volatile, the SD card is volatile, but there's no moving parts in here.
Right. Getting stuff off of dead hard drives, that sounds to me, I'm hearing money again.
Yes, again, you're paying someone to handle this problem for you, so yeah, you're probably gonna have to pay them. I think the cost can be very dependent on the drive, the extent of the damage, we'll say, and the amount of information you're looking to get off that.
And if I decided that this was going to hold, like I was going to take everything off, I was going to stick it on this, and now it's full, and I'm going to put it on my shelf. Is that a stupid thing to do? Again, 30 years from now, or even 40 years from now, is anybody going to be able to plug this into anything and get it off?
So I'll address the first part of that. In 20 or 30 years, if you stored this properly, and again, a non-fluctuating temperature room, we'll say, I think there's a very large possibility that the data will be absolutely fine, completely readable. And then to address the other part of that is, can I read it through this port? I would think that yes. Some sort of dongle, converter, something will be available to plug that into.
There's a difference now. The new one is solid state?
Right. So again, typically they've been HDD hard drive disk, and those are mechanical. And then more recently, in the last few years, the SSDs, which are solid state disk,
solid state, right,
have come down quite a bit in price, and those are, I'd say, an even better storage
that's
medium.
where I'm going with that, actually. Right. So if this one are solid state, and we're going to use this as a storage device and try to send it 30 years in the future,
I would pick the solid state if I had to choose.
Even though it's newer technology?
So the thing about SSDs is they're basically like an SD card, but stronger, better, more reliable. They're meant to do long-term data storage. And again, whereas this has no moving parts, that SSD, no moving parts, just a little port, gets its power over that, very compact and simple. Also, the form factors tend to be much smaller than mechanical hard drives just due to the moving parts that need to exist.
Got it. Let's talk about phones, because it feels like right now we're shooting on a camera that we have here at GNAT. I there's a good chance that his phone, this is Alex's phone, is actually better than the camera I'm using right now. And this seems to be such a wave of the future in terms of no one really is going to have those cameras unless they're after, I don't want to go nerdy on us, but after really good sound. These have good sound, but
Yeah, these have acceptable sound.
These are great
Yes.
for everyday life.
So I think when it comes to phones,
And I should add in, the reason I wanted to talk about this is that I have a friend who has a dead phone. They never took any of the stuff off, so that phone is like this sitting on their bookshelf.
I think that's true for a lot of people. You know, you have your junk drawer that has a couple of the old phones in it,
Right.
and those phones probably maybe have pictures, videos, memories of some kind on them. These, depending on the age of the phone, all of a sudden that can become a really big problem. These are not as easily adapted to the future when your phone is older anyway. I'm talking about flip phones, the little plastic clamshells from years and years and years ago.
You mentioned earlier a Palm Pilot.
Right.
Way back in the way back?
Right. My wife used to have a Palm Pilot that shot video. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, much different than what we think of a phone today. Those older devices often required a specific driver for your computer so your computer could talk to that phone and say, hey, give me that data,
Right.
give me that movie, give me that picture. And so if you're unable to find that driver software, or if you're on an operating system that has no way to install that, you know.
Interesting. So you're branching up. You're going, like I'm sitting here worrying about the physical connection, but what you're starting to now talk about is that there's actually two connections. There's a software connection and a physical connection. And if one's missing, and phones
are the most susceptible to this, and older phones in particular.
Because that's what everybody's using now.
Yes, newer phones, iPhones, Androids, the way they do it now tend to be more like I'm plugging in a hard drive and I can look at my files on there and pull
Right.
them off and manipulate them that way.
Right.
I don't need a special driver to talk to it. So that's better nowadays. You're able to
Right.
just instantly grab that off, or a lot of times they have the integrated services that let you upload to
Automatically.
Right.
You're not really storing anymore. You're shooting and getting rid of immediately.
Right, and you're sending it to the cloud. And for those of you who don't know about the cloud is just someone else's computer, which is good and bad, I guess.
But before we get to the cloud, there's something you're hinting at, is that a lot of the early phones, the quality.
Okay, so let's say everything went well for you. You're able to connect the device physically and through software, and now your computer is talking
so my Palm
to it.
Pilot from whenever. What is Palm Pilot for you? Was what 12 years ago?
Yeah, about 12 years ago.
Okay, so Palm Pilot.
And so we got those videos off many years ago, or let's say now you're able to get those videos off. One of the things I think people will be surprised to encounter is the quality is lower than they remember. The degradation of the file can
In what
occur.
what way do you mean? Is it this bad? Is it VHS bad?
It can be worse than VHS, and that's simply, it comes down to a lot of the implementation of how the camera captured those images, the size of the sensor, the resolution.
And most people don't really know about that stuff.
Right. That's kind of behind the scenes stuff where it's
Right.
like point and shoot, your video is done. This is kind of behind what's happening.
Only 15 years later do you realize that the resolution was so bad you can't even stand looking at it anymore.
Right. So I have some of those old videos that are 10 and 12 years old from this old Palm Pilot, and I watched one last weekend on my computer of today, and the quality was terrible.
Wow.
And
So that whole history of yours that you shot.
it's there. I suppose if you played it in a very small frame, and that's one of the other problems.
Yeah, will you explain that?
So the cameras of yesteryear used to capture a video that was about the size of a large postage stamp.
So the video was that big.
Right,
on the
and when we're
screen.
saying pixels, it's very few pixels. You know, common resolutions today are 1920 by 1080. That's a regular TV you have in your living room. That's the resolution. These videos were 320 by 240. So, you know, a sixth of that size.
So when you look at it on your nice new shiny TV of today, What happens?
Don't put it on full screen because you're going to be confused as what this blurry mess on your TV is. That's what it comes down to quite a bit, is just those phones of the time. It was a novel feature, but it's not the same as if you were to take a, let's say an over-the-shoulder type camera.
Right.
It's not.
So, Alex, if I was doing a doc on you, a documentary, 20 years from now about your life, there'd be this whole stage where I don't have any video of you because it's too small to show on any viewable screen in today's world that people...
Right. And that's accurate. And for me, it was kind of hard to go back and look at some of these videos and be like, wow, that is not a good rendition of that memory, so to speak. It was very blurry and...
Right. That's not what I was hoping for.
Right.
So before we leave that, then your advice to people who are shooting, because I swear to God, it seems like everyone is now shooting every home movie experience on their phone.
Yeah, phones are very good.
So that is it. That is the new reality. So what's your advice to people that are making this history that they want to send 30 years into the future?
Don't forget to download that onto a computer.
Right.
Or send that to a service that you have access to, that you can then download it from.
Are phones getting also so good that you don't have to worry about that quality? I mean, are they shooting so good now that the quality is there?
Yes. I'd say within the last 10 years, the quality has skyrocketed on phones.
So take us from now, phones. One of the things you mentioned with phones is that instead of using them as a storage device when they die, they're immediately offloading the video now, if it's possible. So that's where we're now ending up in the cloud.
Right.
As you can tell, he wasn't a big fan of the cloud. I recently heard MySpace talking about they were trying to shift some files or something, and something went bad, and they went, oops, we lost a lot of thousands of people's stuff.
Right, and so that's something that can happen, and without them being able to have a way to get that back, it's gone. It's not coming back.
When you upload to the cloud, do they guarantee that you'll always be able to get your stuff back, or is in the small print that says good luck?
I think that really depends on the company, the service, and what you're expecting of it. But oftentimes, if they go belly up, it doesn't matter if there was a guarantee to have your file
Right,
be
there's no
available.
money.
Right.
So let's take Facebook. Let's say, I know a lot of people upload family stuff to Facebook.
I would recommend against that for multiple reasons. One is oftentimes they drop the quality.
So it never looks so good again. So even if they gave it back to you, let's say I lost my copy, because I didn't make a copy, and Facebook says, yeah, here it is.
Right.
We could be back to, oh, thanks for the VHS copy of my home movie.
Kind of, sort of.
Kinda, sort of.
When you've seen digital video, people kind of have an idea of that looks off. Something is wrong there. Okay. And that is oftentimes what tends to happen. The resolution is shrunk, the bit rate is turned down. And so even if you were to say, oh, thankfully Facebook gave me this back, it's not the same video as you uploaded.
Right. So you get what you paid for.
Right. Which was nothing. You pay. That's a free service, and that's what you get.
Now the cloud service, you're going to have to pay to keep your stuff at the quality you sent it up. Is that correct?
I think you need to look more closely at what service you're uploading to.
Okay.
Because some make that guarantee, others don't. Others are, again, not manipulating, but gathering information on what you uploaded and then selling that, because there has to be some value for a free service somewhere.
Okay. So in conclusion, what you do yourself right now is what?
I try to keep my media on a relatively recent medium, we'll say. I don't have any Super 8s. I don't have any VHS. I don't have any DV tapes. I've moved away from DVDs. Right now, things are stored on essentially SD, my internal computer's hard drive, and I don't have any cloud services. So that's one thing where I'm falling short on if I'm really concerned about the safety of my data.
So you got it on your computer and you got it on an external storage device of some kind, usually an SD.
Actually, it's a USB 3 flash drive.
Got it. So
which isn't perfect. that can corrupt, that can break, that can be
Right.
lost.
But you know you've got two,
Yes.
so the odds are something's going to survive.
Right.
Okay. All right. Phew. Man, you know, we could probably do this 10 years from now, and it's a whole nother world.
Absolutely.
And the same situation still exists, is passing it on to the future is a never-ending chore.
It really is never ending. And part of that is, again, like you were saying, technology is always changing. The connector, the connections, the software, the hardware, things are always changing, hopefully improving.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes it makes it easier for us to get these older things to the newer thing. And on what I think will become much more easily as time goes on is digital to digital. Whereas
Yes.
a lot of this stuff
Right.
is analog to analog and analog to digital
Right.
can be difficult. And digital to digital will be much easier in the future.
All right, so last thing. If I've got any of this old stuff, your advice is,
Get it to today's standard, the digital format. These things,
get it off.
yeah, these have a shelf life. And even if they're well taken care of and these tapes and discs or in films may still work in 20 or 30 years, do you have the player? Do you have the
Right,
connections?
right.
Do you have the software, et cetera?
Yeah. I could leave all this stuff to my children's and their children's, and they'll just all be pissed at great-great-grandpa
Right.
for never taking care
It'll
of
be
it.
the box of film and VHS will just be pushed along one generation.
To the next. All right, folks. Thank you so much, Alex.
You're welcome.
Haas, GNAT News. We'll see you next time.